Hey, welcome on the second part of the roller coaster tutorial. If you haven't seen the first part, go check it out right now. Today, we will create the pillar setup that is holding the rails. We'll start with the curve setup and we'll see how to mesh it next week. So it looks simple, but there are actually a few variables to take in account to make this work. I will attempt to make the procedural approach as easy as possible with no VEX code or just a tiny bit, nothing scary. So whatever your experience with Houdini, I hope you will get something out of this tutorial. So as you can see, we need a setup that can interactively change the number of legs in the pillar so we can get a tripod look for the highest pillars. And the higher the tripod, the more we want those legs to be spread. Oh damn, that sounds wrong. Well, you see what I mean, right? Let's dive in. So last week we had this main pipe setup with the swipe and the skin node that are generating all the curves. Let's just add a null and call that output rails. We can give it a little color so we can see a little better. And we're actually gonna isolate one of the curves that support the pillars. So let's just type in 2 and delete non-selected to isolate it. Now, if we drop a group branch and actually switch the group type to points, now if we change the select value, we can actually control the spacing of those pillars, which is pretty cool. Let's just call the group pillars. So we can drop another null. I just enjoy the null and call that point pillars. Now we can actually use the peak node. So if you haven't used it, the peak node is gonna transform the curve based on the normal direction. So all those points are like pointing like in a they have a certain flow, and we can actually like inflate or deflate kind of the overall shape with it, which is gonna be pretty handy to actually make this first section of the pillars, like this little derivation thing going on. So let's drop a blast node again, and we're gonna just keep the pillars point that we just created. We're gonna get rid of the primitive. We just need to keep the points, so let's keep points. That's cool. Now we're gonna drop a merge and actually merge those points with the original ones. We can copy and paste those nodes. Awesome. Yep, so we got all the proper points. We can drop an attribute wrangle like before and just use this expression that we used already. And this way, when we use an add by group, add by attribute and call the ID is gonna connect all those points together. Wonderful. So now that we have this shape, we may want to have like the main pillar thing going on. So we're gonna drop another null, call that pillar, let's say section. Let's organize a bit. Yep. And we're gonna drop a copy stamp node. Yep. So that's gonna be the template, and the cross section thing's gonna be a line. Cool. So we may want to delete the normal because otherwise it's gonna override like the direction, and we want the direction to be -1 so that all the lines are like going down. Yeah, that's the proper direction. So we're gonna just make a group of points. We're gonna call that point ground and enter the number of the point that's like gonna be snapped to the ground, which is the number 1. And yeah, that's better. So now we got all those lines, and we're gonna create a ground. So let's just drop a grid. Not sure why I'm going that far, but let's make it closer. Call that ground and make a null. Call this output ground. Can give it a little color like usual and start merging stuff together. The scene is taking shape. Right. So the normals are kind of messed up. We can drop a normal node. That's better. So we can also connect the lines we just created with the little thingy. That's cool. And we're gonna call that output pillars. Yeah, that's looking cool. Then we can actually drop a ray node that's gonna allow us to project the point ground to the ground we just created. So let's in group select point group, and the method's gonna be a minimum distance. So now we got some kind of funky lines going on because the ground is like too small. So let's spread it up, and can also like give a little more divisions if we want. And maybe we could add like a mountain node, let's say, if we want to give some variation. Yeah, that's way too much though, but yeah, I'm gonna reduce the height for now. Yeah, so now we got like a good base for the pillars. We do need to transform that into a kind of tripod. I'm gonna make some room for the next of the tutorial. So let's make some more room. Let's look all right. So I'm adding some null. Let's call that rails. Yeah, it's important like to keep things organized as you go, because this tutorial is gonna get like pretty messy if we don't rename anything. Actually, let's just call that output rails curves, because it's just curves, and that's the rails. Cool. Now we can actually drop a transform node after the pick node. Where is it? Yeah, here. So transform node. This way we can actually like make it less straight. We'll see later how we can get something a little more sexy, and that it's not like bending so much like at the bottom. For now it will just do okay, I think. So one of the things that I will keep using will be the for each loop. So making a bit more room. You're gonna understand pretty quickly the goal of this little section is to go through every primitive that we have. We can also go through the points, but in that case we just need the lines which correspond to a primitive, and we want to apply some operation for every of those lines. So if I check out like the input, we just got one lines. That's great. And let's start from there and add a sweep node like usual. So no, that would be the backbone. And we can drop actually a circle. That's going to be the cross section. Cool. So as usual, the circle will be a polygon, and the number of sides for a tripod would be 3. So let's make it 3. So that's how it look. We got like a nice triangle, but we want the triangle at the top to be smaller though, so that we get this tripod shape, right? So to do that, gonna drop a resample. So if I increase the length, it's like just keeping the start and the end, and you got this attribute curve u, which corresponds to a number between 0 and 1, which is like the, yeah, see if I go increase the number of points, we now get a value that's like defining the position of the point like along the length of this line. Not sure if it's clear, but it's actually a very useful attribute that we can use to control the scale. So for now, let's just copy the sweep and let's make it like tiny value, like 0.05, and we're gonna mix those two guys with an attribute VOP. So the second sweep is connected to the second input. We dive in and we can import the point attribute with a import point. Yeah, so that's we're gonna change the input to second input, and it's gonna call the point attribute. If I mix it, you can see that we got the second input and the first input position. So if we mix those two guys, let's add, yeah, see now we got the perfect blend between those two. And now if we call the attribute we created curve u with a bind node and we connect that to the mix, we do get the proper mix between those two guys. We just want to swap the input so that the smaller one is at the top, right? So now if I drop a skin node and just change the connectivity to columns, we get the tripod shape we were looking for. Yep, it's a bit too much, so we can reduce the scale a little bit, get something a little more subtle. Yeah, 0.1. Cool. Now it's all great, but in real life the spread angle get higher in function of the height, so that the largest tripod get more stable. To do so, we need to measure the length of our original line. We just need to drop a measure node and change the measurement attribute to perimeter. As we can see in the spreadsheet, it just created a primitive attribute with a value around 0.5 for the first line. However, our attribute VOP is working with points, see? So we just need to convert this prim attribute into a point attribute, so we can call it downstream. So we just need to drop an attribute promote, change the class to a primitive, and now we can call the perimeter. Should be converted into a point attribute. That's great. So if we go back at the attribute VOP, we can just create a bind and call the perimeter. We can multiply, so we can multiply the curve u by perimeter. That's great. Let's actually add a multiplier so we can override like the global scale. So I'm dropping a parameter that we're gonna call scale multiplier. Awesome. Say a default value of 1, and now if we look at that, we got a more realistic angle depending on the size of this tripod. Awesome. So I'm gonna reorganize a little bit. Let's move this merge node here, and if we check out the result we are right now, it's looking pretty decent. Now the thing is, if we look at the tiniest tripod, we actually don't need something like that. We could actually replace it by a kind of two-leg thing. To do so, okay, let's move some more stuff, make some room. Let's move that here. So I'm gonna select all those nodes, copy them and just paste them, and inside the circle decrease the division to 2. Let's check out now what we get. We actually just get like this two leg thing. Let's change a bit the rotation to see we can get something more interesting. Yeah, that looks more convincing. So now we can create a delete node. We want this operation on the points, and operation is a delete by expression, so we're gonna write at perimeter less than one of the values we find in the spreadsheet. So the middle value would be something around 1, and yeah, that's better. If we toggle on and off, we see we are getting rid of the smallest one. And if we edit the parameters, we can actually add a float that we're gonna call size select, copy the parameter, and just pass through relative reference into the filter expression. So now we got a pretty cool parameter. So we can copy the delete node to the other side and check delete non-selected. And let's not forget to copy the size select of the other one and paste it into the other size select. We can now rename everything. Let's just call that pillar tripod, and the other one like pillar 2 legs, I don't know. Can merge them both together. Let's make some room. Sounds cool. So now if I check out the result, it's looking pretty good. It's a pretty good base, I think. Now we can actually highlight the main parameters. It's going to be the group range selection. As I vary the number of points, we see the pillars changing. So that's a pretty cool thing to have in a procedural setup. I hope this second part wasn't too overwhelming. Let me know in the comment section how you felt about it. If it's not done yet, subscribe to my YouTube channel so you won't miss the third part of this tutorial. So next week we will see how to take those curves to the next level. We will mesh them in a way that looks intricate enough, so stay tuned.